Okay, so let's set up our Blender for sculpting. First thing I'm going to do is assume that you're using Blender 2.8 for the first time, so go to Defaults and Load Factory Settings. As I've explained in the last video where I showed you Blender 2.8, this will reset all of your preferences, so you have to go to Edit, Preferences, and go to, let's see, well, add your add-ons. If you have add-ons, you can add them, and then you can go to Input and emulate 3-button mouse for your tablet so that you can navigate. So once you're done with that, we will go to the sculpting workspace. So if you remember when I was showing you Blender 2.8, I said there was a way to show this top bar over here, or the header, basically, for all of these tools, which is really useful. And I found out how to do it. So if you're in a different workspace, you can go to View and Tool Settings. Basically, that's how you get it back, or you get it in a different workspace if you want to create your own from scratch. What I also wanted to show you is that when you switch, if you remember, I told you if you have an object selected, in some of these modes, if you switch, it switches automatically to sculpt mode, which is something I personally don't really like. So the way you can remove this is by going to Workspace over here and changing the mode from sculpt mode to object mode, so that the next time you do it, it goes to object mode. Now, what I'm going to show you, actually, I'm going to show you two ways to do this. So you can either go to the workspace that you want to do. So if you want to go sculpting, you can go to sculpting. They have some useful stuff over here. You can right click, duplicate it, and you get a second one with the same exact settings. So in the second one, for example, I could change the sculpt mode to object mode. And if I go and switch back, you can see it's in object mode. You can rename this by double clicking it, and you can name it whatever you want. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. We will just create a new one over here, plus general, and you can see we have other options. So we have the sculpting one, we can go sculpting, and we're gonna double click it. I'm gonna call it Yan Sculpts. You can call it whatever you want. And once you do that, we're gonna basically play around with this one. I see that they changed the original one to 0.001 so that you don't have two workspaces with the same name. I'm just gonna remove that. All right, so in Yan Sculpts, I'm going to change this to object mode. Okay, and let me just double check it works. I think it's because I was in sculpt mode. Do it again. All right, perfect, it works. When we switch back, it's in object mode. And then what I'm gonna do over here is select this, and let's see what kind of things we wanna see. So in the sculpting workspace that we created with here, by default, we have some things that are hidden that are not hidden in layout. It's just useful to know where they are. Personally, I won't show them because I kind of know how to work without seeing them, but sometimes it's useful to have them back just to double check things. For example, the origin, right? If you move the origin and you want to put it back, or you're not sure if the symmetry is acting weird, you can always double check that the origin is in the middle. So you can put it back if you want to. If it bothers you while you're sculpting, you can just remove it over here. The 3D cursor, same thing. It's right over here. By the way, I didn't explain this, but the 3D cursor, since by default it's left click right now, before in Blender 2.79, left click move the cursor. Now I think it's better that it doesn't move it automatically anymore, and right click doesn't either, by the way. To move it, you need to shift and, let's see, right click, because I used to move it a lot by mistake. So I think that's pretty useful. It's a good change. So Shift S, cursor to world origin. So that's how you move the cursor in the 3D viewports manually. So mouth getting dry again. Wow. Man, summer. Anyways, so moving on, I'm going to hide the 3D cursor for the sculpting viewport by default. We're gonna keep everything here more or less the way it is. Outline selected, quite important. I want to see what I'm selecting if I have more than one object that I'm sculpting. And yeah, cool. The extras is basically when you create something like, I don't know, a lattice. You can see it if you have the extras. So could be useful. I'm going to keep it. Text info, I guess, sure, why not? If you want to know if you're in the front view or not when you're sculpting, it's good to have this over here. What we don't need is the gizmos. So just click on this, gizmos gone. Okay. And yeah, I'm going to keep it that way. So over here, I'm going to click on this, make sure you're in matcap. My personal preference is this one, but to better see it, what we're going to do is delete the cube and create a UV sphere, because anyways, actually, let me just make sure, Shift S cursor to world origin, just to make sure that I'm creating the UV sphere in the middle. All right. Yeah, because when I sculpt, I usually start with a UV sphere. You can play around, and you can also actually create your own stuff. So for example, let's say you want to create an eye and you use eyes a lot. So if I rotate this like so, and I don't know, I'm not really going to show you how to create the eye from scratch, but just do something really fast, just to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about. By the way, when the left click is by default, Alt and left click won't grab the loop. You have to double click this. All right, so I'm just gonna pull it backwards, and this one as well. There you go. Maybe add with Control R a loop here, the G twice to slide it, and just add a supporting edge. Another one over here. You'll see why in a second. I'm gonna add another one over here so that I can take this one and push it backwards. And create something like that. There you go. So just imagine this is an eye. You can always add a subdivision surface. Since I added supporting loops, it will work for the most part pretty good. There you go. Okay, and I could go to edit mode, move it to the right so that the origin point is still in the middle. So if we take a look over here, let me see. Where are you at? Origin points. Oh yeah, you get more options when you're in edit mode, by the way, over here. For things that you don't need to see in object mode. Anyways, so the origin point is over here, so I'm gonna move it in object mode so that the origin point doesn't move. Create a mirror, right? Maybe put it like this to always have eyes on the scene so that I don't have to redo this process. And then we could hit M, new collection, eyes, okay, and hide this, right? So we have it in the scene, but it's hidden. We can go back to collections. We click on this so that when we create, we can see what we're doing. Shift A, mesh, and UV sphere. So that's what we're gonna sculpt. So whenever you're working, you know, you're sculpting, you wanna quickly add the eyes, you can just hit I over here and you can quickly have the objects. You can do that for a lot of things that you use often, like, I don't know, maybe if you're creating hair with curves or whatever you're doing. You can set up a sculpting scene that's very effective for you. And once we're done, we can save this to a, you know, save the Blender file somewhere where we could always start with that file whenever we're starting a new sculpt. Or you can also hit File, Default, Save Startup File, but that will basically mean that whenever you create a new Blender file, it will be exactly the same. It will have all of these objects, which you might or might not want, okay? So we're gonna hide that, go to the sphere. So we're gonna go right over here, back to the matte cap. My favorite is this one, as I said, for the most part, at least for now. I feel like this one has a nice look and it also shows the form pretty well. Also, what I'm going to do is make sure cavity is activated, but change it to world. As I explained, I don't want to see all of these individual edges, especially when I'm sculpting in dynamic topology, it becomes a mess. So world looks pretty good. And just to show you, without cavity, it looks like this. With cavity, it kind of pops out more, right? Especially the edges or when you're sculpting with, you know, higher amount of details. So shadows up to you. I like the look of it, but it's not really the most effective way to sculpt with because in some areas it'll be darker than some areas. Just as long as you keep it light, not too dark, it should work pretty well. And also you can deactivate it if it slows down your viewport. I like to activate outline. It lets me see the outline of the object. It's very subtle. It's just the black line that's getting added. The contours over here, you can see. But if you have different objects, it'll be more obvious. You can see here the line, the black line. If I remove it, we don't see it, right? Or yeah, we don't see it basically. So there's that. Okay, perfect. And let me just double check I got everything. So personally, I'm gonna add the shadow, maybe at 0.25. And yes, I think that is pretty good. Also, the color over here, I did not talk about. So there's something called random, which is really cool for sculpting. If you have multiple objects when you're sculpting, which is something that happens often when you're creating a full character, and you want to see the difference between the objects, the separate objects, if you hit random, bam, you know, you get all of these different colors or different hues. There is no specific way to, well, I don't know if any way to actually change the way the color is. So sometimes there are three colors that are very close to each other, three hues, three saturations. Actually, same saturation, different hues. But anyways, I don't know how to change that. You can always duplicate it and delete the other one, and you get a different color. All right. Back to the main sphere. You can use single for a single color, and you can play around with the matte cup color over here. I'm not sure what vertex is, never used it. Object, and then material. Material is when you start creating materials. It'll show you the material look. So that's pretty good. Can't remember what the default was. Was it object or single? I think it was object. Well, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna put it back to single. Actually, we can go to sculpting and double check over here. Material. Okay, it was in material. Sure, why not? We'll put in material in case we create a material. It happens automatically. All right, before I forget, let's get rid of the lights since we won't really need them in, sculpt mode, or the cameras for a matter of fact. So what we're gonna do is go in the top over here. You can basically select light and camera so that you don't see it. But the problem is if you forget about it once you're done with the sculpt and you want to add lights and cameras and you create new ones, well, they're not gonna show, right? And you might not figure out why right away. So just instead of doing that, what we're gonna do is we can just hide it over here on the right. That way we just affect the ones that are already created. Okay, once we're done with that, we're gonna get closer and we're gonna right click split area and then tab to change the orientation of the splits and put it over here. Now I'm gonna split it again, but before I do that, let me just change some of the options over here, because when you split a window, it'll take the information that it had in the previous one. So what we're going to do is we can select this to remove the naming over here, but before we do that, I actually wanna put the sphere in the front view. So to do that, just rotate and then hit Alt in the right perspective, and it'll say over here, if we get it right, front perspective. If you're kind of lost on where it is, just go to View, Viewpoints, and Front. We'll put it in the orthographic view. So you kind of have to hit the middle mouse button to put it back on perspective. Or you can just, after you put it in the front orthographic view, you can basically just rotate and then rotate and Alt around that direction, and it'll go back to front view. So that's the way you snap the view, which I'm sure I explained earlier, but just in case I'm repeating it. If you're using a graphics tablet, just in case you forgot, you can use Alt and apply pressure to rotate, since we activated the Emulate 3 button mouse. And then if we remove Alt while still applying pressure to the screen, we can hit Alt again and it will snap to the closest view, which in my case would be the front perspective. So the reason I'm doing that is so that when I rotate in a minute and when I start sculpting, it will sculpt in the right direction. And we want to do that on all screens. So in this one as well, we're going to do the same thing. So view, align view, actually viewpoints, front, and then just basically rotate and Alt do it again the same way on the left. As long as it's close to the front view, basically, so that when I start sculpting, let's see, Control D, the x-axis is right in the middle so that the symmetry works properly. That's the only reason. So now once I'm done with that, I'm gonna recreate the sphere in a minute. Just let's get done with this first. So on the left here, we don't really need the naming system anymore. So I'll just click this over here and then right click the naming system. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. So right click over here, right in the border, and I can't get it right. There you go. And split area. Tab, and now we have two of them. Ooh, I forgot to do something, which is actually good because we got to see it now. When the window is really, really small, the view will be a lot more distorted with the same focal lengths. So N to take out this, and then view, and change the focal length to 80 for these small screens. There you go, and then N again to hide it. Since we didn't do it here, we're gonna have to do it. So N, 80 on the view, N again, and we can get closer and rotate the object to something like this, so that when I'm sculpting with the main window, I can see different views. That's pretty cool. You can obviously cut it to more views, or don't even use this if you want to. You can have only one main screen if you don't have a lot of screen space, but I usually do it this way to be able to see the sculpt in different areas while I'm sculpting, which can be very, very useful. All right, so since I'm done with all of this, I want to get rid of the top header, which I forgot to do earlier. So if you remember over here, to show it, I just hit Tool View, Tool Settings. So the same way, I can hide it over here. So on the left, View, Tool Settings, and down the same thing, Tool Settings. That way we get more space. Since we don't really need that information when we're sculpting for these windows, because we only need it on the main one, so that we can, for example, activate or deactivate the symmetry. Likewise for the dynamic topology. All right, so there you go. And yeah, you can move this around with the middle mouse button with your mouse in case I forgot. The thing is, sometimes I repeat the tutorials and I explain it in some of them, and I'm not sure if I said it in the version that I kept. So yeah, I repeat it, that way you know about it. In case I forgot to say it, I said it now, and if I didn't forget to say it, well, you get a reminder, so all's good. So yeah, the middle mouse button over here to move this around, since, you know, we don't see everything, or Alt and, you know, with the pen, just click and it'll do the same thing. So this pretty much covers it up for the views, and now we get to talk about the brushes. Let's grab the corner over here and make it bigger. Make sure you're in sculpt mode to be able to see all of the brushes over here. So for the brushes, we're going to set up the hotkeys. So I explained in the last video when I showed you Blender 2.8, some of the things about the brushes, how they change the hotkeys, and I'm not a big fan of the new ones. So what we're going to do is either change, well, if you want, you can change the hotkeys to the way it was in Blender 2.79. If you don't want to have to get used to it again, just check your Blender 2.79, look at the hotkey, for example, for the draw, which is Shift 5, and then just right click, change shortcut, and just hover over this. It'll say press a key, then Shift 5, and this becomes Shift 5. So instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm trying new methods. So change shortcuts, 1 for draw, assign shortcut for clay strips. So basically the brushes I use the most. 2 for clay strips, inflate. It's always been I, so I'm gonna keep it I. That change, the shortcut didn't change for it. Crease, assign shortcut number 3. Let's see, scrape, assign shortcut number 4. Pinch is still P, but I will assign it to 5. I could always change it later if it doesn't suit me. And for the snake hook, it's K by default, but I'll change it to 6. All right, so G for grab still, and for mask, you know, all that kind of stuff. So we got to change some settings. If you remember in the tutorials on Blender 2.79 in this course, I changed some settings. So basically what I did is I went to the scrape brush, and over here you can click on this, go down to fall off, and change the fall off to flat, so that it works more like a, I don't know, polishing brush, I guess. And then you can go to, let's see, grab, you can change it to 0.1. With my new graphics tablet, I think 0.2 works better for me, but for you it'll probably be 0.1, depends. So yeah, you can play around with it as long as it's not too powerful when you're moving the object. It's good to go, because by default 1 is just way too strong. So 0.2. Now draw by I think I kept it at 0.5 in the tutorial on Blender 2.79 that I did. I'm gonna change it because, again, I really think it's because the new tablet I have, because of the new pressure sensitivity and all, some things I don't use it the same way anymore. So for me, I'm gonna put it actually at 1, because I have a wider pressure sensitivity with my tablet. So if I put it to 1, I have more control of the strength using my tablets. But if you can't really lightly click on your tablet and have that really light pressure, don't do that. Keep it at 0.5 because it's going to be way too strong for you. So I don't advise you to follow exactly the same way if you don't have 100% control with your tablet. So keep your draw at 0.5. In most cases, it'll be fine. I'm going to put clay strips at 1 as well. Keep it at 0.5. This is the same thing. As for crease, 1 would be way too strong for me. I think 0.75 would work good. For you, 0.25 is more than enough. But again, you can play around with the strength and see what works for you. But basically, put a strength where you don't have to change it anymore while you're sculpting, because the hotkey is Shift F, but it's very hard to control the size of the strength itself. Yeah, I find it better not to play around with the strength too much. Just choose one that works in most cases. And instead what I do is I use different brushes for different kind of strengths I want. So the draw brush adds a lot of form really fast. I use that when I want to add a lot of form instead of increasing the strength of, I don't know, something that works similar, maybe like a blob or something. It doesn't really work that similar, but you get my points. So let's see, scrape. Yeah, 0.75 would be good for me. For you, 0.5, stick to the... Actually, the only brush you need to change the strength is the grab brush. Just put it at 0.1 and then change the scrape to a flat curve and you'll be good to go. So once you're done with the hotkeys, with all of these changes, you can just go back to your sphere. What is this, a light? We don't need that. So Shift S, cursor to world origin, Shift A, mesh, and UV sphere. There you go. So this is in the front perspective. You can always double check by using the grab brush with G and then pulling it out and making sure that the symmetry is here. So if you're sculpting over here, you're gonna see the symmetry is on the other side, so you're not in the front view. So once you've got all of this down, for starters, I think that's a pretty good scene to start with whenever you want to sculpt, so that you can jump into sculpting right away without having to do all of that again. So what you can do is, again, just go to File, either default save startup file, but that way every time you create a new Blender file, it goes to this. So if you don't want that, what I personally do is just save as the file in a folder. And whenever I want to create, whenever I want to start a new sculpt, I just copy paste or duplicate that file and just double click it. And I got a new Blender file that looks exactly the same as this.